This is the Making Waves Mindset Show with your hosts, Richard Biase
and Dave Moskowitz. Learn from our journey as we share the ups and downs
of being your own boss. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Making Waves Mindset Show. We are joined with Rocky, and this is an exciting conversation. We were introduced to Rocky not too long ago because this man knows everything about profit, money, and we think this is huge because so many of you have been asking about this topic. And as usual, we want you to continue to dream bigger, make waves, and take action in life. So if this is your first time hearing our show, please subscribe, please like, please rate a comment, and we love hearing from you. So Rocky, let's talk about you. Introduce yourself, where you're coming from, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm down here, down south of you all, right, in the United States. I'm an immigrant to America. My parents brought me here when I was 2 years old, and it was a long time ago. And back then, the world was very different, and they were basically starting over life for the first time or the second time. And at that point, they had $25. So clearly, we were not living on the good side of the tracks. They came here for the American dream and to kind of rebuild that life. And very quickly, they were able to move towards doing that. And what I did is I saw them and their friends who also immigrated around the same time quickly move up the economic ladder. In other words, you know, you're living in the not so good parts, and then you're living in the somewhat better parts. And over a period of time, many of these people got to the point where they were living a nice upper middle class lifestyle. And one of the things that I didn't realize wasn't normal is that they would get together and they would talk about money. So they would be like, "Oh, I bought a new car. How much did you pay for the car?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a discount? How are you investing your money?" And they'd even talk about how much money people were making. And so all of these money conversations were happened around me as I was a kid. Back then, we didn't have cable and iPhones, so you had to sit and listen to your parents chatter on endlessly, right?
We may look young, but I think we both remember those days.
You remember those days? So somewhere along the way, when I was a kid, I'm like, I'm going to be a millionaire because I want to have success. I saw what opportunities there were in the world. And that was the other thing. Our parents and the people around them never had negative attitudes around money or success. It was always, hey, the world is yours. Go figure out what it is that you want to do. There was always the expectation of more, better, what's next? Are you doing the right path? And so forth. So that was my goal. So I started learning about money a lot more, doing the math, figuring out how do I build wealth. And I always had side hustles when I was in high school. Is that a side hustle, I guess? Yeah. I would go into New York City and I'd buy stuff and I'd bring it back and sell it for double to all like my friends and teachers. And
I wouldn't say it's a side hustle. That's entrepreneurship. Right?
Between that, I had a paper route. And so as a kid, I was loaded with cash. Like if I wanted something, I could just go buy it.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't saving back then, which, okay, you're still young, having fun. I went off to college. I wasn't thrilled about it, but it was kind of what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to go to college. Back then, college was cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, I was making enough money that I could cover my housing and my food. And I think my dad paid the tuition. It was like $1,800 a year or something. So chump change money in the scheme of things. Always had jobs during college and always making a buck somewhere. And then the other thing that was going on is this is when computers were first coming out. So like I'm a tech nerd. And I was learning how to play with computers. I was playing around with spreadsheets. So the first one was VisiCalc, which is long before we got to Excel. And in high school, I was going into these large companies showing their accountants how to go from paper ledger to spreadsheets. When I was in college, I had a job at a bank and I was running and building spreadsheets for them. So my thought in the back of my head was, I'm going to get out of college and I'm going to build spreadsheets for people. Well, I couldn't figure out how to do that. I knew how to build the spreadsheets, but I couldn't figure out how to build a business. I couldn't figure out how do I get clients. I didn't understand the value even of what I was doing in my natural skills. And so I did what everyone else does. You go out and you get a job. And I had a pretty nice career. I made a lot of money. I had freedom. And I was in sales and I always stayed at the bottom because I would look around me and go, you want me to work 50% harder and you're going to pay me 20% more? That's bad math.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oh,
Yeah.
maybe if I follow this path for 15 years, I'll then get the big payday. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Your lives look miserable.
That's like the promise of a pension. It's like work 35 years and we'll give it to you,
Yeah.
That's when you're free.
That's when you're free. So this whole time I was just constantly building wealth. Like literally, I've used Quicken software, which is a software that tracks your spending. I used it since the early 90s, which is, a couple of years out of college. And so I can go back now. I can show you 30 years of financial data, where my money came, where it went. And I would just always plot, what do I need to do to build wealth and how do I invest and how do I do that? And I did all of that. And I would look around though. I'm like, why aren't there more wealthy people? I don't understand this. And I came to realize that number one, people don't talk about money. It's taboo.
That's right.
Then I started to go, wait a minute. I never learned about money in school, right? I have a Bachelor of Science in Economics. They didn't teach me how to build wealth. I have an MBA. They didn't teach me how to build wealth. So I'm like, we can't talk about money, right? School doesn't teach about money. And then I learned about financial mindsets and the way that people think about money. So if you think about it, when you were a kid, you were probably told, money doesn't grow on trees. Maybe you were told rich people are evil. Well, if you think rich people are evil and you get rich, what's going to happen?
Evil.
You're going to lose your money.
Yeah.
And this is why people who win the lottery or people who get an inheritance usually lose all that money within a few years, simply because their money mindsets aren't set for that. Like, you have to have a wealth mindset. You have to be comfortable with money. And there's two parts to money. I mean, there's making money, but here's the real hard part. And it's gotten 10x worse. People can't hold on to money. Right? They go into massive debt. They can't seem to hold on. Everybody wants satisfaction now instead of tomorrow. And everybody's selling their future tomorrow for a little bit of fun today that they forget about tomorrow. But yet they're carrying that debt burden on top of it. And so that was just kind of a big nutty thing. And so I knew that I had built my wealth and I was like, what's next in life? What do I want to do? And I always loved the money space. Like, I'm a money nerd and a tax nerd. And so I spent my time there.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
In a world where we lack financial education, our school systems are not built around that. Prior to a recording, we just briefly spoke about how everything is driven towards off to post-secondary education, college, university, debt. And then it's a minimum wage job, for maybe basket weaving 101, there's no, you need to find something that is going to justify that level of education if that's what you want to do, but you can make money. It's a mindset. Harv Edgar had the book, The Millionaire Mindset. And it goes right back to what you said, Rocky. It's how you think about it. When you have a negative connotation to it, you're going to view money as negativity, and it's going to fester in you, and it's going to impact your success.
Right. And some people think they're not worthy of a certain amount of money. And so they will sabotage themselves even when they have success. And so I spent quite a few years just kind of learning about money. I started writing articles, and then I started to get into financial coaching on the side. And I learned something. And Warren Buffett says this best. He goes, nobody wants to make money slowly. Everybody wants to be a millionaire this weekend. And that's what I found. I could teach people how to be a millionaire, but they didn't want to learn that because my plan took time. They all wanted to give their money away to the guy who would tell them how they'd be a millionaire this weekend. And that's quite frankly, a struggle. It's not going to happen. It's not reality of the situation. And so that was the thing. And then I came to find out that business owners are just like people, and they are not looking at their business finances. And I'm like, are you kidding me? How do you run a business and not understand the business of business? And I also realized something else. Business owners are more willing to spend money to fix their problems. And so a business owner was willing to pay me to show them how to be profitable, how to be successful. And so I kind of pivoted and I went to that area. And so I started focusing on teaching business owners how to be profitable and how to be successful. And then with that, I pivoted out of my 9 to 5. I said, I had enough of you people. I figured out what I really want to do.
You
Goes
made
back
waves.
to the Excel sheets back in high school.
Yeah.
And I figured, it was much easier to figure out how to run a business today, how to connect with people. And so I walked away from corporate, built my business, and now I'm having a lot of fun.
I love it. And we're happy you're here to share, talk about that. So Rocky, one of the big questions we have gotten more recently, especially this New Year's, we have kind of two groups of people in our show right now. And the first is those who are in the 9 to 5 and they want to make that transition to become entrepreneurs. And of course, with that, they're tied to the security of the paycheck. They don't understand what to do with the money, how much they should maybe have for the transition. We could consider ourselves an education show. We're not telling people quit tomorrow and just start looking for a new entrepreneurial or innovative product to build, but to start leveraging your talents and transferable skills now into doing things. But the money, the profits, that is a huge bone of contention for people because they just can't detach themselves from, it's okay, you don't need to have a biweekly paycheck to succeed.
So that is a very hard transition. And I think too many people think it's going to happen overnight. It is not. I tell people it takes 3 years to build a business. So what I would recommend to people, if you don't have a 3-year runway or an ability to do that, start on the side and build it slowly until it is bringing you enough money that you can make the switch over and make that an easy transition. Because if you're struggling, it's going to make it really, really hard for you to sell because people are going to know that you're desperate. And that's going to come across in the way you do things. So you really don't want that to come across from that standpoint. So that's a big part of it. The other problem is employees are taught to put all their money in 401ks, which means your money is locked up. You can't take it out. So I encourage people to start building cash on the side outside of a taxable account so that they have the cash and the runway to support themselves and to fund their business. The other thing is bootstrap your business. We all worry more about fancy websites and business cards than we do about getting our first client. Business is all about sales. So go learn your sales skills, practice your selling skills, because you're not going to get business until you sell something. And those are the things that nobody probably talks about.
Yeah.
Rocky, Dave and I spoke about that when we wanted to start our show. It's like everyone was caught up on studios and fancy lighting. And Dave and I are like, well, we have like a camera. We already have a computer. We just needed a microphone that could work for this type of stuff. But that's the thing. We didn't get lost into that necessity of the glam, the materialistic stuff that you need or that you see on social media.
But it's so much easier. Oh, I can't start until I have a studio. Let me go spend a year finding a studio and saving up for a studio. It doesn't matter, right? Go out and sell something.
Yes. Yeah. Just get the product out there first, right? Just get moving. And that we talk about that all the time is do we waste our time making this look perfect, or do we just get out there and start doing it so that we can get traction under ourselves and get some movement? And then see if it actually becomes something. And then once we're making that income and the money is there, then we can look at spending some money.
Correct. 0 to 1 is harder than 1 to 100.
Yeah.
getting that beginning momentum to get started is usually the most difficult part. And it's where people really struggle. If you can start, everything else is figure outable. And
Right.
again, bootstrap. Unless you've got tons of money, people either have one or two things. They either have time or they have money, right? It's very rare that you have time and money. So figure out which one it is for you and then do that. If you have money, well, then go look at a franchise or go look at a business that you can essentially buy into and jumpstart yourself that way.
Right.
And if you don't, use your sweat equity, use your talent and energy to help get somebody going, your sales in you to make that person more money, you know?
There's a million paths. You have to figure out the one for you. I think what happens too often is we watch all these gurus and we want to use their system. Their system worked for them and their system worked at a point in time. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you, and it doesn't mean it's going to work today. And I think that's one of the things people really need to realize. Most of the big gurus you see are spending ungodly amounts of money on advertising and promotion. Yeah. And if you look behind the scenes, like I can't tell you how often I've heard stories of, who's the guy who does all of that?
Robert Kiyosaki?
Not Kiyosaki. And we'll talk about Kiyosaki in a minute. The funnels guy. With the $1 million records, like 7-figure launches.
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, I've seen the backstories of people. Hey, I had a 7-figure launch. How much did you actually make? Well, nothing. We spent it all.
Wow.
You know, and so they're running, 24/7 on this 7-figure launch. And by the time you cover all the costs, there's really nothing left. They might have even lost money on it, which is crazy. Russell Brunson.
Yeah.
So Kiyosaki didn't write Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You
Russell
know
or Charles? No, Russell.
Russell Brunson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Robert didn't write Rich Dad, Poor Dad, really. It comes from Sharon Lecter. She's the brains behind that. She's the one also behind a lot of the Napoleon Hill stuff that you see out there. So it's funny when you dig behind the curtain to see what's going on.
That's fair. That's
What's
a good point.
What?
That's a good point, actually, right? Is look into where you're getting the information from him and how it's being received.
Yeah, there's only one good rich guy I know, and that's Warren Buffett. Right. And here's the thing, the way Warren Buffett made money, I don't know if he could do that today in the same way that he did it then. Like he'd have to use a different methodology to do what he did because the world has changed.
Yes.
And it's just different. So.
No, it's very interesting to hear that perspective too. We've been asked, like, where do you guys go to for resources and who do you look up to? And Dave and I have all said, like, there's not one person, because to your point, everyone's journey is so different. And I like what you said, that worked for that person at that moment in time. And there are some other people that we follow and listen. And it's like, they're in the position where they are now, but it took them 15 years to get there. And now they're talking like they're God. It's like, well, hold on a second. What were you doing for 15 years before that? So it's really trying to get a variety on both sides of the spectrum of where that information comes, validating the information and taking action yourself to making your own path. It's your own story.
So let's take some lessons from Warren, right? Warren's got a very simple thing. He goes, I don't want to swing the bat unless it's a great pitch and I've got a low fence to go over, right? He's not going to hop. There's always the opportunity of the moment. Warren's got patience, right? He looks at the numbers. Too often people come up with business plans and they never put numbers to it. And if you actually look at the numbers and the time involved in running that business, you'll quickly realize this is not a business. This is slavery. Like, Don't do this. Run the numbers and see, make it easy. Russell Brunson, I mean, I still love how he teaches how to sell. He knows how to excite people. And there's good and bad to that, right? You know, you excite people, they buy, but then they don't actually take action, which is where I have a struggle. And that comes back to what you said. You know, you got to take action and start, and you can start on the side, taking one step at a time, exploring markets. I mean, it took me a long time before I left work. From the time I decided to the time I left was years.
And that's part of building that plan, you know, and not being rash about what you're going to do, acting on impulse. It's about seeing what's around you, having that plan, and starting to explore. It's better to do this when you have a job than not have a job, right? So, you know, financial education's key in that respect. It's huge. There's a lot of talk about even the electric space, or I should say the digital space, right? The Warren Buffett using stocks is very different than now the crypto world. Right. So it goes back to your point as well for those people looking up to Warren. It was a great way for him to do it. But now there might be a different way, and you need to figure out your journey on that space. You can't rely on what Warren did. So with some of these things, Rocky, what could you suggest, or what's your opinion on those who are now transitioning? They've taken those years, they're pulling the pin, they're moving on. How could you build the profits to have long-term success in your business? And maybe what are the things that people could be doing to leverage, you know, to invest, to ensure financial freedom, financial security as they now open this new chapter?
So I think a big part of that is actually understanding the finances of your business. It's also bootstrapping your business. Too often, everyone will come to you when you're starting your business with the same line. You got to spend money to make money. I challenge that. You don't need to spend money to make money. You just need to go out and get a sale. And that's putting money in your pocket, right? And then building it afterwards. Too often, I see young entrepreneurs, and young meaning new is into entrepreneurship, spend way too much money on things that don't matter. Websites, business cards. As we talked about, you know, the guy wants to go into the landscape business. He goes and buys $100,000 truck because that's what I need. You don't need $100,000 truck to start a landscape business, right? Beat up old truck and a used lawnmower gets you moving.
Sure.
And then the other thing is, most business owners think that profit is an event. I'll be profitable when? No. You should be profitable day one. Now, I understand you have startup costs, but every time you sell something, you should be profitable, and you should take some of that profit and put it aside. This is not your pay. This is your reward for investing in the business, and this is the business making a profit. You still have to pay yourself a market wage. And that's the other thing. I think people fool themselves going, my business is profitable. And you ask them how much they got paid. They're like, well, nothing. I took the profit. That's not really profitable. Right. Your business wasn't profitable. And more than likely, your profit probably didn't even pay you a market wage for what you were doing. So having clarity on all those numbers, I think, is super, super important. And doing the math up front, like, do the math before you build it. How much is it going to sell for? How much does it cost you to build it? What's your overhead look like? How much do you have to pay yourself? And does the math work out? Or at least tell me, well, in order to make this work, I got to sell 1,000 of these. Do you think you can sell 1,000 of those? Test it. See if it's sellable or not sellable. Too often, we put the product ahead of the customer's needs. Oh, I've got this great idea. That's wonderful. Is the world willing to accept it and buy it and give you money? And I'm not talking about your friend and your mother. I'm talking about people out there that you don't know. Because too often, everyone around us encourages our crazy ideas, and it's more harmful than it is good.
We had a guest on not too long ago, Dave, the coffee roasters, their Terminal 3 two incredible financial spaced individuals. That's their background. That's where they still operate. But when they opened their coffee roastery, that's the one thing they said, because they had the financial education, was we ran our models to the point of what happens if we don't make a sale every single day, and how can we sustain this in our business? And it was like, we've never heard anybody say that. It's just like these people came from the background and applied it. They took those transferable skills and they applied it to their business model. And it made a huge set of difference in comfort, knowing it's going to work. We're okay. We're fine. And now they've exploded in just less than a year of their shop. Yeah. It's incredible.
And that's true. I have one of my clients and they wanted to open another location. I said, let's run the numbers. We ran the numbers. He goes, yeah, I don't think I want to open another location. It's not going to be profitable. And I knew that up front, but we had to run the numbers.
Right.
What are some alternatives? So it's not a matter of yes or no. It's a matter of, well, how do we make this work? What's a new way to bring something to the market, do it differently in a way that will work? And it's a lot easier to play on paper than it is to play, reality when you're losing money left and right.
Right.
That's very true. Very true. Dave?
No, it's I'm quiet on this one just because it's a new area for me to venture into. So as our subscribers know, our listeners go, I'm new into entrepreneurship, new into the business world. I'm just getting into a franchise right now. So I'm in and just started the investment, and we're on site location, choosing our site location right now. So we're bringing a franchise to the Toronto market, brand new to the Toronto market. So we're really excited about it, but this is all new to me in relation to learning the business end of it, and getting involved with the financial aspect of it is very important. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it's going to be a profitable business. But I'm realistic about it in relation to, I know roughly the profits should come, but I understand that the profits might not come for 3 years.
Correct. And that's the reality. So you're working with somebody who understands the business model.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that they probably actually surveyed the area to say there's this many potential clients for you, correct?
Yep.
And we expect that we're going to get X percentage of those clients.
Yep.
And this is what we're going to sell it for. This is what it costs. This is what your staffing and overhead look like.
Yep.
And this is what we're projecting your profits. But again, that's not day one. You don't open the door and they don't show up.
That's right.
Right. It's going to take us a couple of years to get to these numbers.
Yep.
And yeah, so they understand the model because they do it over and over again. Business is nothing but math. And when you understand the math of your specific business, it becomes very easy to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I actually sit down with my clients and we actually do all the math of their business. And we start with literally the number of leads. Like, how many leads are you going to get? What's your conversion rate?
Right.
Okay. If this is your conversion rate, this is how many sales you're going to get. What's your average price per sale? What's your cost of goods for that one sale? And then looking at the overhead, because, if you're renting a location, it doesn't matter whether you have 100 or 1,000 sales, you're still paying that. So what do I have to overcome in order to cover my monthly nut? Too often, I think business owners look at their business as a piggy bank, saying my lifestyle needs this, so I'm going to take it out of my business, and they starve their business.
Yeah.
And that's a problem too. And then the other thing, which is just the basics, you have got to separate your business finances from your personal finances. So separate bank accounts, separate credit cards. We don't commingle.
Yeah.
And you need some sort of tracking software. So if you're a little business, Excel. You start to be a little bit bigger, Quicken. You start be doing a bunch of transactions and so forth, go to QuickBooks. There's also a ton of apps out there that you can figure out your accounting system, because if you don't have a scoreboard, you don't know the score of the game, you don't know if you're winning.
Right.
Yeah. Rocky,
that was one. Sorry, I was just going to say that, and that was one thing that drew me to this company to have the franchise, was they they look at themselves as a sales company with X services. They don't look at them as a service provider. They look at themselves as a sales company. And they're big proponents of, here's what your sales need to be. And this is the sales you need to go down the road of and get these numbers so that you are going to become profitable.
Yeah, that's huge, Dave. To tie into what Rocky had stated, even your bank accounts, your credit cards. When my wife and I buy real estate, every property has its own bank account. It's its own business. It's its own entity, and people don't think of these things. And listen, there's no fault. This is part of the learning process. That's why we have experts like Rocky on the show. I'm very thankful that we were introduced to you, because this is such a topic. No, it's taboo. Nobody wants to talk about money. It's all about, you go back to your younger days, like, well, what's your hourly rate? Once you realize it's not hourly rate, it's net worth. When you get to that point, there is a huge difference, but there's that learning spectrum to get there. And those small things, I think, will help our listeners tremendously, because that's the question you're asking. And Rocky's the man that's full of the answers. Like, that's great. That's great. So one thing, Rocky, for you as well, maybe a last closing tidbit. What should our followers do? Maybe there's something on the mindset side tying into money that could just kind of help them overcome the obstacles. Then we'll get into, what your services are, and then where our listeners can find you.
So I think everyone should ask themselves the simple question of, what is money to them and what does it mean? Do they have a scarcity outlook towards money? Because if you do, it's going to be a struggle. And then I think just educating yourselves on basic finance. So there are tons of books on basic finance on the personal side. And then there are books on basic finance on the business side. And it's to understand what those are. And then the other thing is to build a team, right? So the team might be finding a good CPA. It might be a good attorney. It might be a business partner, right? So if you're someone with a lot of money and no time, maybe you find a business partner who has a lot of time and no money, right? And if you're the opposite, then do the opposite. The other thing is, don't go into business with somebody who's like you. And the reason I say that is they bring no value to you. Go into business with someone who's going to look at the world 180 degrees different than you are, so that you get two sides of that coin. And where you find the edge is where success happens, where you can come together and you each see the positive and negatives. And when you can fight it out and come up with a good result, that's where success kind of happens. But if you've got two people who are idea people, nobody's going to actually do the work. So you need an idea person and a worker, who's going to make sure they put the systems and processes into place. Running a business is a systems and process, right? You look at McDonald's. It doesn't matter who they put into there, right? It's a system process. That's what a good business is. That's what a franchise is. They built a system process that's repeatable and doable, that anyone can step in and follow. Too many small business owners don't build systems and processes to follow within their systems and their businesses. So there's a lot of different things. I think the advantage today, there's a ton of free books. You don't need to overpay for these expensive programs, because I'll be honest, I don't think they're teaching you anything that you can't get for free. Right? You listen to podcasts like this. There's others. There's YouTube. Like, you can go find experts.
Right.
Most of the best experts give away their stuff for free.
Yeah.
If you start to listen to a multitude of them, because no one is right? It's what's right for you. You start to learn from all of them, then you can start to think through things. The other thing is, we're all going to make mistakes. So the question is do you want to make it, or do you want to learn from someone else's? I like to learn from other people's mistakes. So go read business books that show the mistakes other people made. And learn from that. And you'll start to see. Go talk to other entrepreneurs. Ask them. Absolutely. What do you wish you had known when you started that you now know? And see what they say. But I think a lot of it is actually taking the time to plan, to think. And the other thing is, I think too often we focus on the product that we're selling instead of the customer's problem
Mhm.
and the desired state and solution that they're looking for.
Yeah, solve
And
those.
so a big part of that, I think, is don't worry about how you're going to solve the problem. Go figure out what big problems are that people will look at you and go, if you can solve that, I'll give you money right now.
Mhm.
That's how you know you've found something. And then collect the money and figure out how to get it for them.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
And that's what it's all about. But too often we aren't taught how to think about business. Oh, I've got this great idea. It's going to be $1 billion. But more often than not, it never is.
It
Right.
doesn't amount to anything. I love that quote about solving problems because it was Shaq. That's where I heard that from. Shaq's talking about the second he changed. For those who don't know Shaq, NBA star, right? But he owns, a multitude of franchises, car washes, like super successful, even outside of the sports world. But he said he was struggling at the very beginning, and it wasn't until he shifted his mindset to how can I solve this person's problem? That's when the profits started coming in, because he had something that people were willing to pay their money for.
Right.
So very.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Dane Maxwell's Start from Zero.
No.
So this is literally it. This is business in a nutshell. Customer uses a mechanism to get a result.
There you
Okay.
go.
Now, here's the problem. We all focus on being the mechanic. The mechanic doesn't get paid. The person who can find the customer and solve the problem and hire a mechanic is the guy who makes millions. And when you start to shift to that mindset, hey, you've got a problem. I'll find you a solution. Give me money. And I want you to understand the numbers here. Someone says, solve this problem. Here's $100,000. You can find mechanics systems to solve it for 20. You just made 80 grand.
Right.
Now you're profitable.
Right.
Now you're not struggling.
I love this, Rocky. We'll have to have you back on, because I think once people hear this and they watch it on YouTube and Rumble, they're gonna go, "Holy smokes!" Like, we have more questions, we have more things, and I think Dave. I don't want to take away your words. Of course, Rocky, we want to let our listeners know what services you offer, where we can find you. But I think this has been a tremendous necessity as we enter season 2 for our program. People want to know the finances, the profits, and this has been amazing. Thank you for being here. So, Rocky, where can our listeners find you, and what are your services offer? What are they about? Let us know.
So before we do that, if you like this show, would you do these guys a favor, and would you like the thing and leave some positive comments?
Well,
give them some love, right?
Exactly.
Share it with a friend, share it with another business owner, so you can start to have conversations, right? They're giving this to you for free. Show a little love.
Thank you.
As for me, I am a profit first professional. So if you haven't heard of the book Profit First, I think it's a must read for every business owner, because it solves the cash flow problem.
Yeah.
It shows you how to run your business well, and it takes care of that. So my clients tend to be people $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. So they've already figured out how to do their business. But even though they're at $1 million in revenue, these people are still struggling to make a profit. And so I help them to be able to make their business that generates revenue more profitable. I've got a podcast called Profit Answer Man, where we teach the business side. And I have a podcast called Richer Soul, where we kind of teach the softer side of life, but we also teach you how to make money, and then also how to live the abundant life that you can with that money. So a lot of great stories on there as well.
I love that. I love that. Not so rigid, cold dollar signs, but the humanistic aspect of life. It's true. You have to have the balance, right?
You have to have the balance. And that's one of the mistakes I made. I chased the money. I got all the money, and I'm like, well,
now what?
Yeah. And so it's figuring out that mix of the two and doing it right for you, and not following somebody else, but figuring out your path.
Mm-hmm.
And
Definitely.
Rocky, for our followers and everyone watching, where can they find you? LinkedIn? Do you have any social media handles, website, any of those things that you'd like to also
Yeah.
share?
So LinkedIn is my name. And actually, if you just Google my name, you'll find me everywhere. I'll be the first couple of pages. The website is Profit Comes First. And the other website for the softer side is Richer Soul,
Amazing.
both.com.
Amazing.
That's
Well,
great.
Rocky, thank you for
Thank you.
joining the Making Waves Mindset Show. We have listeners right across North America, Canada, US, Mexico, and even around the world. We hear so we're growing our show, and we are very honored to have you on our program. So thank you very much, and
Thank you.
we look forward to speaking with you again.
Thanks for having me.